Well, good morning. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXCX, the best talk in town, now also on 102.3 FM. We are a growing station. You can also find many of our shows on social media. Today, I am talking to a candidate running to try to fix the mess in Fresno City Council. He is taking the place of kind of the lone voice of conservatism on that council district to Gary Bredefeld. Today it's my pleasure to introduce Nick Richardson. Welcome.
Good to be with you, Eric.
So that's District 6, correct?
Correct.
So I kind of do this with all candidates. Tell me a little bit about your family.
My family, that's a great question. So my family is very unique, all right? Mom and dad never got married, never dated, never anything like that. So they were just kind of friends. So each, got married and had their own spouse and had kids and everything else. So I'm the oldest of 5, 2 little younger half-sisters, 2 younger half-brothers. Mom raised me here in Central Valley, Fresno. Dad did a good significant part of my raising in Germany. So from an early age, got a chance to travel quite a bit. They all live in town still. They're all best friends. Dad, stepdad, stepmom all went to high school together at Hoover. So everyone gets along, which is pretty rare.
Very rare.
For it. Yeah. But those are my parents. Now I have moved home. I have the chance to build my own family and just got engaged in February to my lovely fiance who I met in elementary school. So the new chapter starting.
Well, that's exciting. So what did you do before you decided to jump into this insanity?
Great question. Well, being a masochist, obviously my job prior to this had to be something along the same lines. So as soon as I turned 18, left town, went to military school, got a scholarship, commissioned in the Marine Corps in May of 2013, and got a job as a combat helicopter pilot. So I did that. I was on active duty for about 10 years. And then in October, I just switched over to the reserve component so I could come home and, like I said, start that next chapter. So my background, honestly, by trade, I consider myself a UH-1 Yankee Huey gunship pilot.
Well, thank you for your service.
My pleasure.
So as a Marine, Marines kind of once a Marine, always a Marine. I had a grandpa that was a Marine. He's since passed, served in World War II.
Rah.
And you could always tell he was a Marine. How he dealt with life, how he approached things, and the idea that there was nothing that he came across that he didn't feel that he could handle. Maybe he needed help, but he couldn't handle. And so I remember growing up with that and always being very impressed with that idea that nothing can't be tackled.
Yeah, they say that any room, you can put 2 Marines in it, and within 5 minutes, they will know who the other Marine is without any prior introduction. And I totally think that's true. You're right. It's, there's something to be said, sure, about coming in and being taught a new thought process, or it's kind of like a cult and they want to repro any of that. But at the end of the day, you're entirely correct. It's how you approach situations. It has to do with your confidence that you have in yourself. It has to do with your faith in other people. And you can accurately assess if there's something that you can do yourself or if it requires teamwork, right? The Marine Corps, they don't make individual Marines and just send them out to do things, right? You have teams of different sizes, whether, every time I flew my aircraft, I always had a co-pilot. I always had at least one crew chief in the back manning the guns. And you get again, being the oldest of 5, I always had a little team with me, right? I was always in charge of making the decisions and setting the example and kind of having that leadership role. And when I got in the Marine Corps, it was the same thing. I didn't want to fly a jet by myself. I didn't want to, have a job where it was just me in an office or me in a tank. I wanted a team who would have my back, and I could kind of give them that leadership and guidance and know that I would have their back in the end.
Well, remember, when you're in politics, there are people that will claim to have your back, but don't. So you're going to have to read, because what they say is less important than their behavior and their body language.
I found that in the campaign process already. There are a lot of people who make the announcement and come out, hey, this is what I'm looking to do. These are the things I'm looking to fix. Sounds great. We're behind you all the way. And then, like we talked about before, they don't return your phone calls or whatever else. And I'm a huge fan of the theory that actions speak louder than words. And, that's I think people are seeing that in me when I tell them, hey, we're coming to your neighborhood next. I'll be there next week. And then, they wake up the next morning and there's a flyer in their door, or, they see the videos on social media and I'm out there sweating and walking around. It's far more than just talking the talk. I think we see too much of that in not only local politics, but state and federal level as well. How many times we've been promised things on the campaign trail? Hey, I'm going to, take care of all of your student debt. I'm going to, build a huge wall in 4 years. I'm going to, whatever the promise is that you get promised these things, I'll believe it when I see it. And Marines are very much about that. I mean, the idea of the stoic Marine, not talking much and being humble and then coming out and performing and doing the best at whatever the task is. There's something to be said about that. And I would bet a paycheck that your grandfather exhibited that as well.
Well, he was in for 20 years, and the last year he was an officer.
All right.
And then he moved on, worked for the post office, and became the postmaster for Yuba County. And then, because he couldn't just actually retire, he went on to a third job and worked when he wanted at a hardware store, helping people.
Like I said, there is something to be said about us being kind of masochists, right? We can't just sit still. A Marine that retires, or you see this a lot in like the Wounded Warrior program and things like that. Once they're not able to do their job, we have to find something to do. And the harder it is, the better, honestly. This is one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life, and I'm loving it because it requires you to work hard. There's an old story. Won't go into too much detail on it, but 1943, Albert Camus, French philosopher, wrote a book about Sisyphus. Sisyphus in Greek mythology had to push his boulder. He was condemned by the gods. He pushed the boulder up the hill every day. And he had this theory that, I think Sisyphus was happy. No one understood it at the time, but point being, he knew that every day he had a chance to put his mind, body, and spirit against the forces of the universe and do this seemingly impossible task. It would be done every day, and then the next day it would roll back down. He'd have to start again. He thinks it was happy because there's valor, there's fulfillment, right? There's satisfaction for people of that ilk, of that nature, to just do work because it needs to be done. And I think that I like to see that in Marines.
It gave him purpose.
Absolutely. He had something to do every day. He had a fight to fight.
Well, I think that when people don't face real challenges in life, that you don't get the best. There's a reason why we refer to the World War II generation as the greatest generation, because as kids, most of them went through the Great Depression, through hardship, and then all of a sudden we had a world to save. Not just our country, we had a world to save, and it was on multiple fronts.
Sure.
And I think that hardship defines people, and the idea that everything should just be given to you. This almost victim mentality that I see a whole lot of the political spectrum advocate. You can't make it because you're part of this group, and maybe you're part of 3 groups, so you're going to win the victim Olympics.
Yeah, well, the thing is about human nature, I believe that everyone has a fight, right? Your cause is no more important to you as someone is to them. However, what that fight is, how hard it actually is, everyone thinks what they're doing is the hardest. Everyone is struggling the most. No one understands me. But for those who actually lack a tough task, who actually lack uphill battles and struggles, the things that they find to make their struggle and the thing that they're going to complain about and spend their time doing, there are people who are out there trying to, fighting for your country. Got it. That's their struggle and they're doing it. I think it's noble because that's a big undertaking. There are people who, the hill that they want to die on. Everyone has their hill. The hill they want to die on is whatever, getting the right for kids to dress up like a cat when they go to school. And that is the most important struggle of their lifetime. And that is what they're dedicating themselves to. But I think you learn a lot about people by what they choose, what hill they choose, right? What they choose to make their struggle. There's nobody out there who doesn't struggle.
Right.
But the thing that they find their cause d'etre, right? Their important fight. I think that says a lot about people.
So when you have an important decision, what do you do? What's your process? Something you're maybe not completely sure what to do.
Really glad you asked that, actually. I haven't been asked that before. So 2 things. One is first, I start off by doubting myself. All right, which seems counterintuitive, right? If it's not something that I can make a split decision right away, which, again, flying helicopters, you don't often have a lot of time to think. If I do have the time to think, I start by doubting I say, let's say I'm coming at this from the wrong angle. What is the right angle? I have a pretty simple process. It's 4 steps. 1, I make sure I identify the problem, which seems basic, but a lot of times people find the wrong problem, right? They attribute it to people. They attribute it to something that, for example, you want to make a change in the city. You're unhappy with crime rates. You say, well, it's because of this, this Democrat or this Republican on city council. That's the problem. That's not really the problem, right? So once you define the problem successfully, then you start thinking up causes. Okay, what are possible causes of this? Maybe we'll reject some, maybe we'll accept them. But everything that happens, every outcome, every event has actions and conditions that led to that event happening. Now, once you spell all those out, you figure out the exact causal tree for what caused this thing, you start working in solutions. Which of these causes, which of these small, like the butterfly effect, which of these little butterfly things can I take out, I can fix, that will stop this main problem from happening? And as many as you can fix, you do.
So you fix local.
Well, you fix local, but every big problem starts with smaller problems. Every big problem. You know what I mean? Like the water crisis in the valley. That never would have happened had 6 or 7 things not set themselves up for that. Had we not had strong dam infrastructure, had we not had a guaranteed water plan for farmers, had we not had environmentalists take legislation up to protect the Delta smelt, had we not had infrastructure in place to manage the maintenance levels or the brackish levels in the Delta. So every big problem comes from smaller problems. And actually, so this is my main time. This is my main job, right? This is my full time occupation. I'll say is campaigning. 1 week a month, I do business consulting with a group of other retired pilots, and we'll investigate accidents. Someone damaged themselves because there was a chemical spill at a company. Johnny got his foot run over by a forklift. Whatever it is, we often come into an environment where that's not our field, but we have this analytical process of looking at problems, finding these causes, identifying everything properly, implementing solutions, and overseeing how they work. And if not, repeating that process ad infinitum until the problem's gone. So using that, that's the same mindset that I'm going to take and use here. I did as just my own nerd project, I decided to do it with homelessness. Right, homelessness, huge issue, made by a bunch of smaller issues. And
right, and I do want to get into that one later.
Oh, we will. But I will suffice it to say, using this same strategy of step 1, identify the problem. Step 2, find the actual causes. Step 3, find which causes you can solve that prevent it from happening. 4, implement those solutions and oversee them. You can fix any problem in the world. There's no problem you could give me right now, the causes of it, that I couldn't give you a solution for.
Thomas Sowell often says there's no solutions, just choices, because every solution has its effect, and meaning that not every aspect of it's going to be positive. So it's how you have a value system. So with where does your worldview start?
I'd say my worldview probably starts with faith. I'm not gonna come out and blow smoke and say that I'm the most religious guy or the most church going, or that I know the Bible better than anybody else. But I would say faith is a lot bigger than that. There's faith that there is right and wrong. There's faith that there is good and bad for people. Right? There's faith in the people around you. Like we said, I get in a helicopter every time, and you can pray 1,000 times. It's not going to keep you away from problems that are man-made in that helicopter. Right? So I have to have faith that the men and women who have built that and put that together have done their jobs properly, and they have to have faith in me. Faith goes both ways. So I'd say my worldview starts with that. The second thing is I have a test I run this by. If I were to look my kids in the eyes in 5 years or 10 years or whatever, when they can comprehend these things, and explain my actions to them, and they'd be proud, I'd go, oh, okay, this is in line with what you taught me and what I know right to wrong to be. Then I'm comfortable with the decision. I'm not okay. I have so little patience for liars. I have so little patience for thieves and for cowards and for cheaters. I just do, because those are comfort-based decisions that aren't based in a higher sense of morality. And it just drives me crazy that people can sleep on that at night.
Yes, I take somebody giving it to me straight much better than lying for
100%.
any reason.
I would so much rather disagree with someone, but be just intellectually honest. And like, listen, I think taxes should be 50%. Okay, I think they should be 5%. Why? And they explain themselves thoroughly. We're probably still going to disagree, but I'm going to have so much more respect for that person afterward, because they came at it honestly, and they're not here to deceive. They're not here to steal things from people and whatever else.
Well, as long as you can have a conversation that is based on, intellect. And part of what you're going to come up against is people that have this, non-faith based. Their faith is in things that aren't God. Climate change. Now, I don't want to get into this big discussion because there's other more important things, because you're not going to make a lot of decisions on that, though I love exploring those ideas. Do you with the Constitution? So I'm totally changing gears. Is it a living document? How do you view the Constitution?
So we've been kind of led into a trap. All right. It's kind of like the term woke. Woke used to mean, hey, keep your eyes open because the government's watching you. Make sure you take care of what's in your water. Watching the barbershop movies, I always say, hey, stay woke. That's been hijacked to mean something else. So living document, same thing. It's that phrase has been taken to mean, oh, it's just an organ. It's like a guy. It's like a person. It's something that we can change as we see fit. It's it's a malleable document. Well, that's not what a living document was intended to mean. In fact, there's a reason that before any of the states ratified the Constitution, they said, this is great, but we're going to need to make some amendments in the form of the first 10, right, Bill of Rights. We're going to have to make some amendments to this, and we'll keep adding amendments as we see fit. But that was the premise upon which it was ratified. So I think living document is absolutely fine to describe it that way. You just have to be cognizant of the fact that it doesn't mean what a lot of people will tell you. It doesn't mean it can go away. It doesn't mean that we should scratch parts of it out and come back later and, well, this was wrong, or I didn't like these guys, so we should change it. So I think as we progress as a society, as we face new challenges, as as life advances, right? This experiment, as we get further on in this American experiment, there will be times that we need to, and let's be honest, the Constitution exists for one reason. There are times that we need to secure and guarantee more rights for the people against the government, as government continuously changes and as people change.
Okay, that's fair. And I do think that it is a living document in the sense that there is a very difficult amendment process. 2 different ways you can go about it. You can either have a convention of states or you can go the other route. But it's purposely made difficult. It's purposely divided government so that power isn't in the hands of one individual, and so we don't turn into either, and I don't care which side, either some sort of either monarchy or totalitarian state. And you can have a leftist or a right totalitarian state.
Well,
or an oligarchy where it's just a limited elite few.
Totally agree with that. There are 2 wrong ways to go about it. One is never touch the Constitution. We should never change it ever, in which case it wouldn't be ratified in the first place. This conversation would be moot. Right. But at which point is it done? Before they emancipate slaves? After they abolish alcohol? At what point should we not touch it? Or there's also the idea that there should be 75 amendments right now, and we should keep slamming things in there that happen to be the cause of the day.
Cause du jour.
Exactly, the cause du jour. I was a French major in college, so I appreciate that French there.
That's about all I speak. Spanish, I'm not terrible, but no French. One more question, and we'll probably have to go to break. Where do you stand on local control?
Local control, define that for me.
Okay, so constantly, city governments get orders from how you should conduct your business from the state and from the federal government, sometimes through laws, sometimes through money that grants that have strings attached. So how do you navigate that around so that you can find the vision that's right for your community? Because they're trying to tie your hands, particularly at the state level.
So I will say, kind of as a base premise, right? The maximum amount of governance that can be left to the smallest entity possible is best. Now look at the extreme. That means individual freedom, which, I mean, I don't know if any of the listeners would disagree with that. Individual freedom is the ultimate end goal to that.
There's only a few that listen to this show that are not based in the idea that individual freedom is our foundation.
Yeah, and you know what? They're not going to like me. But that being said, if something is not handleable by the individual, sewage should be handled by the city, not the state. If it can't be handled by the city, then if it can't be handled by the state, then you move up. So to the extent that we're able to affect and be the captains of our own destiny here in the city, I think it should. Now with us, it's a particularly interesting situation because it's a relatively conservative area of the state, which is not a particularly conservative state, which means there's probably going to be some direct conflict between what Sacramento wants to do here and what we want to do here, right? Sacramento only knows Fresno from a distance. And let's be honest. I'm sure they have interns that are from Fresno State who are bright kids and whatever else. But no, I think, and this goes for the state level as well. I think that we should be able to govern ourselves. Now, I will not say no to a grant from the state for just about anything. If they're going to give us money, okay, that means there's other money that we can free up to do other things we need to do. However, as far as control goes, I mean, maximum extent at the lowest level, and then move it up when need be.
I'm going to make a brief point on that, and we'll then go to break. The state has decided, for instance, during COVID, that the city of Fresno because they got more COVID money than most any state of it, or most any city of its size. That you had to follow all these rules, and yet emergency services suffered in Fresno during that. And your sister city, Clovis, went an entirely different route, and I believe there was both more freedom, and they still had money from taxpayers to pay for emergency services because that's your largest block. We're going to go ahead and go to break. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town. I want to say thank you to everybody now listening on social media. Please like, please subscribe. Before we get done, I will make sure that this man gives you some contact information so you can find him and tell him what you think. If you like him, maybe give him some money, or maybe be willing to walk or make phone calls. Let's go ahead and come back. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town. What would be your top, do you want it to be 3, top 5 issues?
Yeah, 3. Well, 4. So my top issues. It comes from care from veterans, right? It's kind of where it starts. You have a huge veteran population here, being that we're pretty patriotic as far as a place in California goes. However, from studying, I mean, even when I was in the military, I was looking out for veterans. I was looking out for current service members. But all of those causes that affect them disproportionately affect everybody. Mental health isn't specific to service-related individuals, right? So mental health is up there as well. Homelessness doesn't only affect veterans, albeit disproportionately. It affects everybody. I mean, it affects people who are trying to run a business and they have, homeless encampment outside. It affects kids and families who are trying to go back and forth from school. It affects the individuals, the mother with her kids who's trying to raise them and can't afford rent. Crime and drug use are the other two. Drug use, I would not say it's rampant in the military, so do not take my words as that. However, I ran the most successful substance abuse counseling and control program of any military forces in the Pacific. I mean, we had it investigated analyzed and audited by much higher powers than ourselves, and it was ranked that. And same with my suicide prevention program I ran. So mental health, being that it affects veterans, that is something I'm passionate about, and luckily that transfers phenomenally to the city. Right? We have terrible, terrible mental health capabilities in the city, which it's a county function by nature, right? But the county is now unable to deal with the mental health crises that are taking place. Drug use as well. Okay, the advent of fentanyl, I got it. That has definitely added a new chapter, right, to this fight. But drug use isn't that in and of itself. Drug use, take fentanyl out of it. Drug use still contributes to crime. It still contributes to homelessness. It still it has a negative effect on mental health. And even worse, when it affects kids or families who have no previous exposure to that, and all of a sudden some sort of drug makes their way into the house. So really, it's those. It's veterans' needs, first and foremost. However, homelessness, drugs, and crime, it's a fire triangle. You can't have one of those without the others.
Okay, so I want to point out that the mayor of Fresno seems to have chosen a housing first solution
Yes.
to homelessness. Now, they've been doing that in San Francisco for years, and to zero success, negative success, I believe that you have to address mental health and drug addiction. So you have to put them in a program before you put them in a house, because they're just any type of housing, because they're just going to destroy what's there.
All right. Well, we'll get a couple more listeners mad at me here, but housing first is great. It is a great approach. There's a great interviews and reports and books written by Michael Schellenberger, who was a independent candidate to take out Gavin Newsom in the last gubernatorial election. He did vast studies on homelessness. Right, housing first is great, but that can't be housing only. Right, America first is the way to go, but it shouldn't be America only. Housing first is great. It shouldn't be housing only. As soon as you put them in the houses, that's taping up a leak. Mm-hmm. Okay, the leak's not going to happen for a few hours, but have you really stopped the leak? Have you really fixed the roof? You haven't.
No, you've just shifted where the homeless are hanging out.
Exactly. And the thing is, every homeless, I've spoken to dozens of them and a bunch of other experts who know about this. Homelessness doesn't have one story. There is not one reason that everyone who's out there on the streets is out there. Every single individual out there has a different story for why they're there. Are some of them drugs? Absolutely. Absolutely. Drug addiction is a huge contributor to that. Look at San Francisco, the UN Plaza in San Francisco, right? One of the places that as a kid I used to love going and seeing because that was an example of America grabbing every other country by the lapels, pulling them together and saying, we need to make decisions as a nation. Now, any of those nations can come visit UN Plaza, which is, all but defunct and decrepit, and see open drug use. And not even,
with police walking by, I've watched videos where the police look over, somebody's shooting up, somebody's dealing, and the cops are absolutely connected. By the way, your role as city council is providing the budget for the cops.
100%.
So you have direct control if they have told the cops, do not enforce this. The greatest way to get more of something is to either give it money and then let them do what they want, or I think that ignoring it.
Yeah, I totally concur with that. And they're in a tough place, right? The San Francisco Police Department is so undermanned.
Right. I'm not blaming the cops. I'm saying this is why they're making the ridiculous decisions they are.
Correct. And what did I say in the beginning? Every outcome, right? Every big situation, it's a bunch of little situations that added up to it, right? So the University Medical Center that's just closed down on the south side of town, right? They're looking to sell that. The city and the county are working out a deal to sell that. Okay.
Was that Kings Canyon and Cedar, I think?
Yeah, it's down just south. Yeah, Kings Canyon. What a huge opportunity there that could go to something like, how about triage? How about triage for homelessness, right? Because it's just like an emergency room. Not everyone comes in there with the same reason. They don't all need the same help. If you're a veteran, you've been against drugs your whole life, you're disabled, you can't work, you find yourself out on the streets. Am I going to treat you like I'm going to treat someone who has spent their entire lives in drugs and crime and business is just slow lately, so they're homeless? Those are two entirely different problems that have to be triaged. You're 100% right. You have to have the police, not only the individual policemen out walking the beat, but you need to get their representatives in there to weigh in on what they're seeing. They're the ones, as much as people think they know more about homelessness than anyone else, and I'd be guilty of that as well, they're the ones who are out there dealing with it. When crimes get reported, when someone calls in, someone's breaking into my house, or when they have squatters, right? You have to get the sheriff's department in there. You have to get the EMTs out to be able to weigh in on these things as well. And unfortunately, with our mental health situation right now, we, again, are understaffed. We're seeing a trend here that you need to have mental health individuals there, in addition to the DA, in addition to the VA, to be able to triage these things and come up with, again, fixing all these small causes that lead into it, right?
So you would be about allocating more money for those types of emergency services, because I see all of those in that bailiwick.
100%.
And they all fit in that basket.
Spending is something that shouldn't be taken lightly. And spending is something that shouldn't be done on pet projects. However, we have such an opportunity here in Fresno to be a beacon of rationale, a beacon of intellect when it comes to dealing with these small problems. We don't have the population of San Francisco or LA, but we can show an example of a good, responsible way to confront that. I appreciated the Mayor Dyer's initiative to, especially during the COVID time, to take some of those hotels that were generally unpopulated and fill it with the homeless. Okay, that is housing for them.
Well,
great.
That step, whether you call that step one, I kind of think the treatment's first and then you move into the housing. But chicken or the egg?
And that's the thing. And like I said in the beginning, if you come at it from the right place, and you come at it from a place of, hey, I'm here for solutions, I can respect it. Now, once I put them up there, and they don't have to stop doing drugs, and they don't have to stop committing crimes, and they don't have to worry about their mental health, then what have you done? Again, at this point, you just put a bucket under the leak. Okay, you found more places to hold this water, but the issue is the water occurring in the first place. You're not stopping homelessness. Any problem you want to stop, right? Anything that's ongoing that is not desirable, the first step in fixing it is stopping that problem from continuing. If you want to stop the leak in your roof, if you want to stop a leaky faucet, first thing you have to do is cut off the water to the faucet. I feel like it goes without saying, but finding more buckets to stick them in, we could build 10,000 homes for the homeless out on the outskirts of town. That's not going to stop homelessness. It's going to spread the problem. Until you attack the root causes, what are you doing? You're putting a Band-Aid on it. Well, if I get shot in my left shoulder, flying my helicopter around, I go back and I fix my left shoulder, and I go back out, and that's all I do. I haven't fixed the problem of, hey, our guys are getting shot. I just damaged the damage that I saw right there at the time. It doesn't do anything. You got to have a way of protecting against that happening again. How do you stop homelessness from recurring? We could go pick them all up in the biggest truck you've ever seen and go take them out to an encampment on the south side of town. Not only would that probably be pretty inhumane and also ineffective, Great. You don't have to see homeless people as you're walking around anymore. Have you stopped that problem from happening? Give it a month. It'll repopulate.
Yes, it'll repopulate, and I want to point out you can go to the smallest town in California and you will find homeless.
Sure.
But clearly what we're doing is not working. I mean, collectively as a state. I get that there are some individual programs that are doing a good job. Are you more of the Poverello House or the Fresno Rescue Mission? Because they have very different programs.
To be honest with you, I'm probably more Fresno Rescue Mission. However, that's from a humanitarian standpoint, not from a practicality standpoint. Although both of those organizations, and
their hearts are in the right place in both cases.
100%. And you know what? That's needed. They serve a very necessary role. However, they are providing humanitarian care and, love and facilities and food and everything for people who need it. But that doesn't stop people from needing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I see Fresno Rescue Mission as making an attempt to actually move them off of homelessness, not just enable a continuance of the problem.
Correct. And the more that, and I hate to, again, attributing any problem to people is a pretty weak solution. It's a pretty weak attribution. It's a weak cause, right? You need to have a system that's immune to people having an effect on it. And the more, there are people, they've told me, there are people who know that they can sit outside the Poverello House, they can do drugs, right? They can go in there and get free food. They can come back out, do whatever they see fit to get enough money to buy more drugs. And they don't have to worry about paying rent. They don't have to worry about buying food. What impetus is there for them to move out of that situation, right? Or to get their kids out of that situation or their family? There's no impetus. They have, if that's all they want, they have what they need.
What can we do about crime? Because obviously we can't fix all of homelessness, but they are connected. But only a portion is connected because I think that most of homelessness is petty crime.
Sure.
There's a gang issue in Fresno, in many parts of the city. There's a drug trade issue. The homeless are obviously somewhat connected to that, but they are not the ones spending big money on drugs. They're buying their little portion for their day or hour.
They're providing a market.
But they are providing a market.
And I don't want to downplay petty crime because although, petty crime doesn't as often result in deaths or abductions or whatever else, petty crime is the reason that I would choose to put my business in this city as opposed to that city. If I know that my windows aren't going to be broken, or I know that, I'm not going to have somebody break in at night and steal product, or whatever the situation may be. So petty crime, okay, it's called petty, but I know a lot of petty officers in the Navy who would argue that they are anything but, right? That doesn't imply that it's not significant. You shouldn't take a look at it. So we can look at, hey, what level of crime you want to look at? You want to look at Mexican cartels coming in? You want to look at, big human traffickers, drug lords, and Bond villains. Okay, but a city council standpoint, city council has one job and one job only. Your job is to improve the welfare, quality of life of the individuals in your city. That's it. Your job is not to make history. Your job is not to get an award or a feather in your cap. So
you pick the one where you can do the most good.
Well, I pick the cause that, if fixed early and most appropriately and within my wheelhouse that I can fix, will prevent other bigger problems from happening. If businesses start leaving en masse away from Fresno because of the petty crime, what's your biggest problem now? Is it heroin or is it petty crime now?
Well, here's the thing. As soon as your tax base disappears, you no longer have the money to fund, and you're already, the police department, the EMTs, you need more of them. The mental health people. You need a tax base.
100%. You're going to get to a situation where the last 7 residents in the city are city council. They're going to sit there looking real silly. But let's get back to your original question, right? How do you stop crime? First and foremost, there is one entity we have in the city that fights crime. All right? We don't have a Batman. We have law enforcement officers. That's it. And I know that goes without saying, but what does that actually mean? It means you have to take care of them. Okay, well, what does that mean? One, you have to have enough of them, right? You have to have enough, and you have to keep them here. So I talked to
So they need to be at least somewhat happy with their job.
Well, they need to be happy with their job, but they have to have a reason and impetus to stay. Firefighters have told me this before too. They go, listen, you can pay me half of what I'm making right now, and I would still do this because we are crazy. We love running in and fighting fires. I love when a fire happens, we get in there and we can knock it out before it creates damage, before it hurts anybody. That is what gets us going. And I can appreciate that as a Marine. We hear gunshots, and that's what we run toward, right? We want to fix the thing. For the police, it's a lot more nuanced because they don't get that kind of, it's a slow burn, if you will, of their. That's why a lot of police, around the world will struggle with mental health issues because they're always on. They never know where the fire is. They don't get called. So
That and they deal with people on their worst day ever.
absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Anytime the police get called, I mean, it should be a day that stands out in your memory, right? But taking care of them means making sure that we have enough police to do the job. It means making sure that at the backside, their retirement is significant enough, right? With their retirement program, it's significant enough that they want to stay. If I have 6 years left before I can retire as a policeman and Modesto is going to pay me, $10 an hour more, what impetus do I have to stay here? Love for my city? Is that really your gamble? You're going to hope that they love their city enough to stay? Hope is a terrible, terrible action plan. So what I would propose is working with the local schools that we have relationships with, whether it's Cardin, which is a private school that I attended for, I guess, junior kindergarten, if that counts, or San Joaquin Memorial or St. Anthony's or whatever else. How about we work with them, the schools in the area, to get reduced tuition or free tuition for children of law enforcement officers? They get a great product who's coming in because these are kids who are raised by cops, which you can usually tell a kid raised by a cop or someone in the military, right? And if I'm about to move, but I think, hang on, I can stay here and retire here, and my kids get to go to school for cheap or free, what a great impetus that would be. Fresno Pacific, same thing. So that's one. Two, again, making sure we man them properly. And three, and arguably the biggest one, I was just talking to a police officer yesterday. His name was Ron, great guy, talking about things that are close to my heart. So with my background in mental health from the Marine Corps, in addition to, delivering bicameral legislatures and free market economies, one high explosive rocket at a time, we really occupy ourselves.
Steal that
and go for it. We really take care of the person. The Marine Corps, the military at large, has learned that you have to take care of everything about the individual. They have to be in physical shape, but they have to be in mental shape. They have to be in spiritual shape to go out. They have to be in a socially healthy enough to be able to deal with everyone you work with, or else you don't have an effective fighting machine. This isn't the 60s where, hey, can you fog this mirror? Do you have a pulse? Can you walk more than a mile? You're in. That's not a sustainable fighting force. But the same goes for law enforcement officers. You have to invest in their mental health. They had a working group where citizens of the city, to include law enforcement, they pitched 73 things, 73 changes they want to see in the police department for officials. Many of those things said, hey, we need to have counseling services. If we have an officer go and he's involved in an officer-related shooting, he has to be able to go decompress that somewhere. He has to talk to someone who knows. Sending them back home to their families ill-equipped to deal with that thing. Not that they're lacking any personal skills, but a lot of the stress or a lot of trauma that is normal with their job, and it makes them heroic for volunteering to get into that, it just goes uncared for. It's like having a gun that you put in your pocket, and every time you use it, you refuse to clean it. Yeah, cleaning a gun is not the sexiest thing in the military, but it's required if you want to do your job right. So until we start taking mental health seriously, and financial health, and stress mechanisms, and coping mechanisms, and substance abuse, counseling, things of that nature, how do you expect to send a police officer out half-equipped to do the same job? How do you do that? How do you...
Well, they're eventually going to quit.
You wouldn't send them out with a gun with one bullet in it. You wouldn't send them out with handcuffs that all the joints in the handcuffs are busted. So why would you send them out mentally ill-equipped to go accomplish their job when we rely on them so heavily? Is that the individual that, you take 800-something police, you equip them poorly to do their job, you don't give them what they need, you just shake the dice and throw them out to the city to go interact with people, like you said, on their worst day, to go knock on a door at night, to go pull someone over, in the middle of an unoccupied part of town?
So I do want to say this. I'm not trying to cut you off, but, police officers are heroes. Maybe you could interact with them when you see them and think, wouldn't that change their perspective about their job?
100%. And anybody listening, I would encourage you to go do it. I saw some police, I guess it was 2 days ago now. They were at a gas station. Some guy had stolen some stuff. All right, they wrapped him up, threw him in the back of the car. But afterward, I went and talked to him. I said, hey, what are you guys doing? How often do you respond to things like this? Why'd you bring these things out? What are you doing for the rest of the day? And talk to these guys and understand that they're people, because there is a stigma. Mm-hmm. And with societal changes, which every police officer I talk to talks about the ebb and flow of how society sees the police, they're oftentimes not viewed as individuals. They are viewed as the system, mm-hmm. or the man, or the law, whatever it may be. Totally agree with you. Yeah, go thank them or just ask them what they're doing or see how their day is. They're not gonna put you in a chokehold if you go up and ask if their day is going well.
Well, it depends on what your body language is. You
Yeah,
come up
exactly.
asking crazy, that might be a problem. But maybe you should have a smile on your face.
Don't ask them with a knife. Yeah. Ask them.
We're going to go ahead and take our last break. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town. So the final portion, I always like to focus on hope and solutions. We're going to start it off when we come back, as you're going to give your campaign information, contact information. We'll do that again at the end, and then we'll do that after the break also, after the show's technically over, because my social media people know that they can find it at the very end.
Nice. Okay. Do you want to do a like what would you do on your first day in office or what is it anything like that?
If you think that's useful, sure.
Okay. I got 5 things that I've done.
Okay, let's go ahead and come back. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town. Today I am joined by Nick Richardson. He is running for Fresno City Council, District 6. And, as everybody knows, I like to end my show rather than just complaining, because there's so much to complain about, but trying to be more constructive, trying to move people in a direction where they get involved in government, where they take responsibility for their own lives. With freedom comes responsibility, and boy, we sure like our freedom, but an awful lot of people seem to run from the responsibility. So I'm pleased to see that my guest is actually stepping up from the Marine Corps, and then he decided that the Marine Corps was just too easy, so he decided to run for office. Because at least in the Marine Corps, you're crazy, but you're all kind of crazy in the same way. You all have the same discipline. You all honor each other. In politics, it can be ugly. So I hand it to you for being willing to step into that arena.
You know how I keep that all that Marine Corps mentality sharp? I'm still in the Marine Corps. That's why.
So you're in the reserves?
Yep.
Okay.
I actually just got selected for promotion a few months ago. So
cool.
Yeah.
Well, very good. So, day one, what's going to be your priority?
Day one. Glad you asked.
That's assuming you're elected, and so we got to take care of that.
It is. I mean, as a pilot, I'd be remiss if I didn't have my pilot plan. And my pilot plan is the first 5 things I want to do. 1, the P, right? Because being a Marine would work better if we can use mnemonic tools. P, I'm going to publish this entire study that I've done from talking to hundreds of homeless people and from talking to all the agencies and organizations that are behind it. Show all of the causes, the root causes, the actions, and the conditions that have led to the homelessness issue, and take that to the county board of supervisors and start that conversation again that has been left derelict. So number 1 is I'm going to publish and I'm going to stick it out there, and everyone's going to see exactly what has led to this problem, be it a certain governing body, being it an out of control condition, or specific actions that have been taken, bills that have been turned down, whatever else that have led to the problem in the first place. 2, an interpreter. It blows my mind that at city council for people to engage, you have access to a Spanish interpreter, you have access to a Hmong interpreter, you have access to a Punjabi interpreter, or whatever else you can request. However, none of our individuals in the city who are deaf or hard of hearing have access to those things because there is no permanent sign language interpreter. There's no permanent closed captioning for any of the city council meetings. And so in order to get everyone involved, and if someone's not going to like me, I want them to know why they don't like me. I want them to be able to hear me speak or see me speak or have an interpretation of what I'm saying.
Well, here's something crazy. Fresno Unified, which I consider to be an absolute basket case, but they have a sign language deaf interpreter. Always there, at every meeting.
They can do that. And for some reason, city council has, and I've asked multiple times why this doesn't exist. And everyone's hands have been thrown up. L, law enforcement. I'm going to come out very forcefully, first day in office, and come out with a statement that is in no unclear meaning, very much in support of the police and the fire, with specifically the topics we talked about, looking out for their mental health, making sure they have the staff, the equipment, the care, and the honest investment from the city in a retirement program that matters to them, to keep them here and keep these individuals who for some reason have chosen to, again, pick this struggle as their raison d'etre, right? To pick this struggle to apply themselves, which in our opinion makes that heroic, and make them make it very clear to the entire city that from day one, I am an ally of theirs. And it doesn't matter, who's related to whom or who funds whom, that I will have their back. I will have their six, as we say in the military, from day one to last day in office.
So that's your 5?
That's 3.
That's 3. Okay. I was like, I didn't think that was the whole 5.
No. O is going to be overhaul the pay system. So at this point, any meeting that city council has, they are allowed to vote on their pay. Now it has to be accepted and it has to be approved and go through. But they just voted for themselves a 75% pay increase, which would be phenomenal. I'll tell you what, I know a bunch of other captains in the Marine Corps that if we all got together and voted for a pay increase, I'm pretty sure we could push that. But it's not tied to anything. It's tied to what they think they should be paid. And a lot of them do a great job, and I get that. And living is expensive. However, when you live in a city or you are nominally in charge of decisions in a city where the average income is in the low to mid 50K, and you vote for yourself to make almost 3 times that much, why? Earn that. You have to earn that. I don't deserve, no one deserves to go take a job they've never had to make more money than they've ever made in a year to make decisions that are ineffective. So I think it either needs to be tied to something or
maybe somebody else makes the decision, or it's only a percentage tied to inflation.
Yeah, or maybe put it out to a plebiscite. Let people vote. Hey, what and maybe it can be something vague. What percent of federal judges do you think the city council should make? What percent of this? Or maybe $1. But I can tell you now, there will be some surprises probably coming down the pike when I get in there as far as city council pay come. And I'm not going to reveal much more about that now. But I'm telling you to stay tuned. Trust me.
That was 4?
Correct. Okay. T is going to be time. I'm telling you right now, the first thing I'm going to do is, as soon as we get into office, after I've knocked out those 4, and ideally I could do this day one, I'm not a big champagne guy anyway, is allocate that time properly. Okay? You watch in the city council meetings, this is not a personal indictment on anyone, but there's a portion that is public comment. They can come up and they can make comments publicly. Everyone who comes up and makes that comment probably votes, probably pays taxes, and probably lives within the boundaries of your city. And if you're going to be on your cell phone while they're talking, or you're going to use that as your time to get up and go chat with someone else, or you're going to use that as the time that you don't show up, or you take your coffee break, you're not giving them the time. What is that, an hour and a half on every other Thursday? So it's an hour and a half every 2 weeks that you are unwilling to give them your undivided attention.
I go to a lot of government meetings. Board of Supervisors, Fresno County is pretty good. With the exception of one person on Clovis City Council, it's good. Not going to name that person, but they've thought they needed to have a conversation and things like that as I was speaking. Never been to a Fresno City Council meeting because it didn't feel like I could make any real difference. So I go to school board meetings, both Fresno and Clovis.
Making a difference is, that will come and go. But I go, in fact, first one I've missed in a while is this one that I'm here for.
So we're down to about a minute and a half. So let's go ahead and give your contact information, and then I'll let you sum it up.
Great. Okay. Yeah. You can follow us on all the social medias. If you go to nicksgotyours6.com, you find our campaign website. We are on Facebook, Twitter, and the platform formerly known as Twitter. We're on Facebook and Instagram as well. Instagram, find us at Nick's Got My 6, the number 6. Nick Richardson for District 6 on Facebook, and at Fresno Firebrand on Twitter, or now on X. And feel free to follow, subscribe, like, comment, whatever else you'd like. You can also email the campaign at Richardson for District 6, that is the number 6, at gmail.com.
Okay. We're down to about a minute. Final thoughts. Why are you hopeful?
I'm hopeful because it is hot outside. And when it's hot outside, none of my opponents want to be outside. And it's just the way I was raised. And it seems silly and trivial, but it's not. It's really a commentary on the kind of work I do. I'm comfortable being sweaty. I'm here to work for you. This is not my retirement plan. I do not want to make it that. I'm here to work. And why, at the end of the day, if you want to pick a leader, if you want to pick someone to vote for, I would tell you this. A good leader, when things go wrong, a good leader looks in a mirror to attribute blame. A bad leader looks out a window to attribute blame. When something goes well, a good leader will look out that window and look for someone to thank and people to attribute it to. A bad leader, when things go well, will say it's all about me. you can tell a lot about people from how they react to good and bad situations. So use that in your mental criteria when you're picking someone to stand up for you.
Well, I sure thank you for this time. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town.
Good.
For the social media audience, can we go through that part of it again?
100%.
Contact info.
Yes, absolutely.
So,
just go.
Yeah,
okay.
Just go.
Yes, if you're interested in joining the brigade and joining the team and watching this journey as we continue our march to victory, on Instagram, follow us at Nick's Got My Six, number 6. On Facebook, you can find us at Nick Richardson for District 6. With the new fans we have, if you just search any of those words in there, it'll likely pop up. On Twitter or on X, you can find us at Fresno Firebrand. That is me. Any other questions or concerns, feel free to email the campaign at Richardson for District 6, again, the number 6, at gmail.com.
Well, Nick, I thank you for this time.
Thank you, Eric.
And I wish you luck in your campaign.
Thanks, brother.